Good afternoon. Welcome to the Troy Savings Bank Music Hall. My name's Stacy Bridge. I'm the Associate Director, and I want to say thank you to you all for coming out today. Also wanted to ask you all to please visit our website, troymusichall.org, to learn more about some of the fantastic shows we've got coming up this month. Next Monday, we have a special Valentine's Day performance, a sort of tribute to Edith Piaf's life. The following Sunday, February 20th, the wonderful Valerie Simpson will be here doing her tribute to Aretha Franklin. On Thursday, February 24th, we have a wonderful group of musicians here, 5 women who have traveled all the way from Zimbabwe. The name of the band is Nobuntu, and what they needed to do to get into the United States during the time of COVID is just inspirational, as is their music, so we hope that you'll join us for that. And if you happen to be a fan of bluegrass or folk music, on Monday, February 28th, the Punch Brothers will be returning to our stage. I'd like to thank a few of the sponsors who helped make today's show possible. A huge thank you to Fagan and Associates, Business for Good, the Troy Savings Bank Charitable Foundation, McCarthy Charities, SEFCU, and of course NISCA, the New York State Council on the Arts. Now, if you didn't notice on your way in, we have some representatives in the lobby today from the Troy Public Library doing their book sale. It's become sort of a music at noon tradition. We also have a representative from Humana here to answer any questions you have about health care. I think those are all the thank yous I need to do. Thank you again for coming out today. We have a fantastic show, so please welcome the Lost Radio Rounders.
As I was walking down the street, pretty little gal a chance to me, we danced by the light of the moon. Buffalo gals, won't you come out tonight, come out tonight, come out tonight. Buffalo gals, won't you come out tonight, dance by the light of the moon. Won't you come out tonight, dance by the light of the moon. All righty. Well, folks, we have a theme for you this afternoon. It is Songs of Our Empire State, and we started out there in western New York. That song was written in 1844 by a fellow named John Hodges, and it was familiar to all those traveling musical theater groups that went around the country back then. But what they would do with it is every time they went into a new town, they would change the name of it. It's just fortunate for us in New York State that Buffalo was the name that stuck. So when we speak about the Empire State, as we stand on this stage, the Hudson River is just a few blocks away. And it's very easy for us to sort of take it for granted. But really, since the early days, the Hudson's been the very heartbeat of New York State. Transportation, commerce. Of course, in the early days, it supplied food for the native peoples, the Dutch, the English, et cetera, et cetera. And they even used to have a harvest every year on the Hudson. They used to go out and harvest ice on the Hudson in the days before refrigeration. But food for the soul as well. We think about the Hudson, we think about the writings of Washington Irving and the paintings of Thomas Cole and Frederick Church and their fellow Hudson River School painters. So we're going to start our journey off here with a trip along the Hudson. This song was written 50 years ago, and even at that, it is the most recent song we will be playing today. down my golden river, sun and water all my own. Oh, I was never alone. Sun and water, oh life givers, I'll have them where'er I roam. I was not far from home. There's sunlight glancing on the water, life and death are all my own. But I was not far from home. Life to raise my sons and daughters, golden sparkles in the foam. I was not far from home. I'm sailing down this winding highway with travelers from near and far. Oh, I was never alone. Exploring all the little byways and sighting all the distant stars. I was not far from home. Sailing down this golden river, sun and water on my own. Yet I was never alone. Thank you. Well, if that number was the most recent one we're playing, this number is going to be the oldest one. It was written during the American Revolution. And let me swap guitars for this here. We're going up the Hudson, up past the Federal Dam at Troy, up to the Stillwater, Schuylerville area for an old ballad called the Battle of Saratoga. And this ballad, in those days, ballads were long, man. Ballads are story songs, they're narrative songs. And I did some research. The first version of the Ballad of Saratoga was 21 verses long. So that would take about half of our time anyways, I would think. So I left a few out, a few verses I left out.
Good call.
But anyway, we're talking about the campaign of General Johnny Burgoyne. He and another British general wanted to split the colonies in half, and Burgoyne was going to come down from Canada, go down Lake Champlain, and hop over to the Hudson and head towards Albany. And this other general was going to come up from New York City, except he got waylaid and went to Philadelphia. Whoops. But anyways, John Burgoyne, if you ever want to read about an interesting character, he really thought the world of himself. He really was a confident man. Before he left London, he placed a bet that he would be back in a year as a triumphant victor. But that didn't happen. And this will tell you the story of how he came down Lake Champlain. He did manage to take Ticonderoga, which they basically gave up. But then he decided to hang out in the Skanesboro, Whitehall area, staying with the Tory family, drinking their wine, gambling, flirting with the daughters, which he didn't mind because he was married. Yeah. So anyway, here's the characters. You can't tell the characters without the scorecard. We've got Burgoyne in this song. We have Friedrich Baum, who was commander of the Hessian mercenaries who traveled with the British. And we've got Johnny Stark of the New Hampshire militia. And of course, Baum and Stark meet in the Battle of Bennington. They tried to get some more supplies for Burgoyne's army, but that didn't work out. And then finally, Horatio Gates, the commander at Saratoga. So this is the Battle of Saratoga in short form. Come unto me, ye heroes, and I the truth will tell concerning many a soldier who for his country fell. Burgoyne, the king's commander, and his cursed Tory crew, with Indians and Canadians, they up the Champlain flew. They up the Champlain flew. Up the Champlain flew. With Indians and Canadians, they up the Champlain flew. Fort Ticonderoga, full well both night and day, their motions we observed before the bloody fray. Burgoyne sent bomb to Bennington, with Ashton's there he went, to plunder and to murder was fully their intent, was fully their intent, fully their intent, to plunder and to murder was fully their intent. But little did they know then with whom they had to deal. It was not quite so easy our stores and stocks to steal. Stark would give them only a portion of his lead, and with half his men and sons that bomb lay among the dead, bomb lay among the dead. Soldiers' heart to cheer, Burgoyne he set advances, but death was all health to Herkimer and our commander Gates, to freedom and to Washington, whom every Tory hates. Likewise unto our Congress, God granted long to reign, our country's rights and liberty forever to maintain, forever to maintain, forever to maintain, our country's rights and liberty forever to maintain. Battle of Saratoga.
Okay.
That was the Cliff Notes version for all you people over 50. That was the Cliff Notes version of the Battle of Saratoga. Well, we're going to go even farther up the Hudson. We're going to go even farther up the Hudson. The highest source of water for the Hudson River is Lake Tear of the Clouds, just a tiny little patch of water on the side of New York's tallest peak, Mount Marcy, or as the native people called it, Tahowas, the cloud splitter. But, switch again here, sorry guys. Back in 1901, Theodore Roosevelt was climbing Mount Marcy with some other folks when a very exasperated messenger came up the trail and said, sir, you've got to return to Washington as soon as possible because President McKinley is dying. Now, Roosevelt knew before he left, it was about 8 days before, that McKinley had been shot. He was out in Buffalo at the Pan American Exposition. He was doing a rope line meet and greet, and somebody shot him. But at first they thought he was going to survive. And they said, okay, Teddy, go do your hike. He'll be fine. Well, not so much. Not so much. So this tells the story of how Theodore Roosevelt went from vice president to president. So we're going to do that, okay? 2, 3, 4. McKinley hollers, McKinley squalls, oh, Doc says, McKinley, I can't find that ball from Buffalo to Washington. Well, Doc comes running and he takes off his specs and he says, Mr. McKinley's gonna cash his last check, he's bound to die, he's bound to die. Look here, you rascal, you see what you have done. Oh, you shot my husband with your Ivor Johnson gun. He'll be gone, long time. Oh, hush. White House, he's doing his best. Old McKinley's in the graveyard, taking his rest, and he'll be gone a long time. Well, Roosevelt's in the White House, drinking out of a silver cup, and McKinley's in the graveyard. He'll never wake up from Buffalo to Washington. White House Blues, people.
Nice picking.
White House Blues.
All righty. Well, we're going to leave the Hudson for a little bit, and we're going to talk about a man-made body of water. You know, it's really hard to explain to people these days, especially to explain to school children these days, that a 360-mile-long, 4-foot-deep ditch filled with muddy water that wasn't even open all year round could have been so revolutionary. But the Erie Canal was. It's impossible to overstate what the canal did, not just for New York State, but for the settlement in the Midwest and the Great Lakes states. And for New York City, before the canal route was open, New York City was just another East Coast seaport, and all of a sudden it sort of became the capital of commerce in the United States. So we try not to take the canal for granted. And of course, it was very important to Troy. You had raw materials moving back and forth on the canal, starting in 1825, coal from Lackawanna, flour from Rochester, salt from the Syracuse area. But in 1826, here in Troy, they started making these big, heavy stoves, and they had to get them to market. Well, they were in luck. They had the Hudson to sail them down one way, and they had the Erie Canal to sail those stoves out the other way. And it cut down the price of cargo. I mean, imagine carrying a stove in wagons on land, and how hard that was. And so it really was a big deal. But all that stuff was lost on the men and women who actually worked on the canal boats, because all they saw was, they're traveling along at 2, 3, 4 miles an hour behind a mule or a horse, and it's boring as heck. And then they got to stop at the lock, and they're traveling at 0 miles an hour. And the worst thing is that, well, it led to boredom, and boredom led to drinking.
Hey there.
So this is an Erie Canal drinking song to some extent, or maybe an Erie Canal not drinking song. But the problem was those guys knew, those men and women on the canal boats knew that there were whalers out there having adventures with, giant squid and things like that, and they just couldn't match it. So they tried to do it in song. We were 40 miles from Albany, forget it, I never shall. What a terrible storm we had that night on the Erie Canal. Oh, the Erie was rising and the gin was getting low. I scarcely think that we'll get a drink till we get to Buffalo. Oh, till we get to Buffalo. Well, the wind began to whistle and the waves began to roll. Oh, pretty quick, I was feeling sick on the Erie Canal. Oh, the Erie was rising and the gin was getting low. I scarcely think that we'll get a drink till we get to Buffalo. Oh, till we get to Buffalo. We were 2 days out of Syracuse when our vessel sprung a leak. Oh, the cook just stood and stared at me, far too scared to speak. Oh, the Erie was rising and the gin was letting low. I scarcely think that we'll get a drink till we get to Buffalo. Oh, till we get to Buffalo. All right, boys, stop and consider their plight. Their vessel is going down in 4 feet of water. There's nothing that they could do other than, get out and walk to the side of the canal. Other than that, they're doomed. Well, I hollered to the driver boy on the towpath treading dirt. He hopped on board, he fixed our leak with his dirty undershirt. Oh, the Erie was rising and the gin was getting low. I scarcely think that we'll get a drink till right, it's time for melodrama. By the time we got to Buffalo, one old mule was dead. Captain had the staggers and our cook was sick in bed. Oh, here I was rising and the tin was getting low. I scarcely think that we'll get a drink till we get to Buffalo. Oh, 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 till we get to Buffalo. Danger, trouble on the Erie Canal. Oh, my Lord. Nothing like boredom. Well, we now have sort of the opposite of that song. Because what happened, it wasn't just raw materials that traveled back and forth, finished goods. There were people who were traveling to find new opportunities out west. And, of course, every time people travel, ideas travel. So back in the days of the original canal, there were a lot of things going on in terms of social reform movements and religious movements. And there was abolition, women's suffrage, and the Temperance Movement. We're going to speak about the Temperance Movement right now. Now, for those of you who aren't aware, because it's not really big at the moment, the Temperance Movement is not roaring at the moment.
No, not at all.
But the Temperance Movement was trying to convince people that it was in their best interest to either stop drinking completely or not drink at all. So they were trying to win hearts and minds. Now you contrast that with the Prohibition movement, which basically wanted to just use the hammer of government. I don't care what you think, we're going to use the hammer of government, and you can't drink anymore. But anyway, the American Temperance Movement started officially in about 1826. Again, here we are, it's 1 year after the canal opens. Did they see all those drunks on the canal route and say, hey, we need an organization here? But anyway, there were temperance societies around the state. And generally, if you signed on with them, you'd sign one of two kinds of pledges. You'd either sign a pledge that said, I will refrain from strong drink. You can still do wine and beer. And you sign that. Or you signed up for total abstinence from any alcohol passing your lips. Unless it was patent medicine, probably. But, so if you signed up for the total abstinence, you put a T, capital T next to your name. And those people got to be known as the, thank you, God bless you, the teetotalers. So this is a teetotalers anthem, which I think every band plays this song, right? You go into any bar, they're playing this. 2, 3, 4. See them come from the mountains, watch them rise from the valley as they march through the city, hear them sound through the land. The teetotals are a-comin', the teetotals are a-comin', the teetotals are a-comin' with the cold water pledge. We are bands of freemen, we are bands of freemen, we are bands of freemen, and we sound through the land. We'll drink no more brandy whiskey, we'll drink no more brandy whiskey, we'll drink no more brandy whiskey in that cold water pledge. We are bands of freemen, we are bands of freemen, we are bands of freemen, and we sign the Temperance Pledge. The teetotals are a-comin', the teetotals are a-comin', the teetotals are a-comin' with a cold water pledge. See them come from the mountains, watch them rise from the valley as they march through the city, hear them sound aloud as huzzah, 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 huzzah. Now you guys are clapping, but not one of you has been convinced to stop drinking. Not a single one of you. Well,
Tom, there is a temperance movement today.
Yeah, what is
On
it?
the side of the beer bottle, it says drink responsibly.
Oh, there you go. There you go. And I guess it's really spread around, hasn't
Yep.
it? Really has spread around. So we're talking about various social and religious movements along the route of the canal. And I was telling the folks here about this group called the Bullardites, who part of their religious beliefs was not bathing or shaving. So I imagine they won all kinds of converts to that. So, you know, but and then you had the Shakers, and the Shakers had to take a vow of celibacy. So if you were a Bullardite and you knew that the opposite sex was not bathing or shaving, you probably didn't even have to take that vow. It was unnecessary. It's a superfluous thing. But anyway, it's often the case that when you have we enter these periods of social change, rapid change, like the ones brought on by the Erie Canal or the Industrial Revolution, you do get an effect of religious fervor also coming up. And in the case of the Erie Canal route, you'll know that the Mormons really got their start almost at the same time that the canal was being built, 1817. And we know that both Joseph Smith and Brigham Young spent time in New York State and lived out that way. And we also know that the canal was very important in the distribution of the Book of Mormon as well. And every year, of course, in Palmyra, they have a Mormon festival out there. But we're going to do a song from another group that had outposts here in New York State. We're going to do a Waterville Shaker song. And of course, the Shakers had communities out in Sodus, out on the lake, a place called Groveland, New Lebanon, Canaan. Those were all New York State outposts of the Shakers. And some of them tried to move out west and settle out west as well, and they certainly journeyed the canal route. But this selection is a 19th century laboring song of the Waterville Shakers, and Michael and I included this in our 2015 album, Hard Trials. Fall on the rock and be broken, low, 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 low. For my holy word is spoken, low, 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 low. Fall on the rock and be broken, low, 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 low. For my holy word is spoken, low, 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 low. Lie beneath the raging billows, low, 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 low. Twist and wave and bend like willows, low, 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 low. Lie beneath the raging billows, low, 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 low. Twist and wave and bend like willows, low, 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 low. Low, thank you. Fall on the Rock from the Waterville Shakers.
Ladies and gentlemen, Tom Lindsey.
All right, well, we got more goings on the canal route, and that would have to do with women's suffrage. Now, New York State led the way as far as the women's rights movements. The first convention, women's rights convention, was held in 1848 in Seneca Falls, which, as you probably know, is at the north end of the Finger Lakes. And Lucretia Mott, Elizabeth Cady Stanton were in charge of putting that together. And also participating was a fellow that we probably all know, the abolitionist and former slave Frederick Douglass was among the participants. But what was interesting is that a lot of these movements sort of overlapped on each other. Like some of the religious people were temperance people, and some of the women's rights people were abolitionist people as well. And unfortunately, that was a problem. Women were not allowed to join the early abolition movement. It's like, what? It's like, hey, we want to help with, no, that's all right. You just stay over there. So in 1852, Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony, being refused to a temperance society that they wanted to take part in, started their own temperance society, the Women's New York Temperance Society. And by that time, there had been other suffrage conventions around the United States. But unfortunately for the women's movement, the Civil War came along and sort of pushed the suffrage issue to the background for a while. This song, interestingly enough, this women's suffrage song is from after the Civil War, and it takes its melody from a Civil War song. This is called the Suffrage Flag. There is a band of women, they to our manor born, emerging from the darkness past and looking towards the morn. Their mothers labored for a light that shone afar, till morn revealed the suffrage flag that bears the woman's star. Hurrah, hurrah, for equal rights, hurrah, hurrah, for the suffrage flag that bears the woman's star. This band stands firm for all reforms, or shall see its end. Bayonets and swords shall rust, we'll use the brain of men. Full of precious cargo, we ride the progress car. Nobly wag the suffrage flag that bears the woman's star. Hurrah, hurrah, for equal rights, hurrah, hurrah, for the suffrage flag that bears the woman's star. Our ship of state for ages was guided by starlight, till the cluster in our flag almost dispelled the night. It is Freedom's Day, our flag shall be, the sun no light can mar. We'll add the light, the suffrage flag that bears the woman's star. Hurrah, hurrah, for equal rights, hurrah, hurrah, for the suffrage flag that bears the woman's star. So thus evolves the greatest triumph of our human race. Church and state, the home and school, awe and love embrace. We shall have a better union, march from near and far, to glory neath the suffrage flag, gleaming woman's star. Hurrah, hurrah, for equal rights, hurrah, hurrah, for the suffrage flag that bears the woman's star. Hurrah, hurrah, for equal rights, hurrah, hurrah, for the suffrage flag that bears the woman's star.
That's a rousing song.
Now I want you to notice the subtlety there. We did a huzzah song, and then we did a hurrah song. So please note your consonants as
Exactly.
you're checking out the songs we did. But yes, there's the women's movement. So, going to do a little traveling. As you've probably noticed, we've been traveling around in time, 1971 to 1777 to 1901. But we're going to go to 1938 now. 1938. And we're going to head down the Hudson River to the United States Military Academy at West Point. And in 1938, at West Point, I believe you'd find this many women down there in the Corps of Cadets. But this is a song that is associated with the Corps of Cadets, as they say, the long gray line. But it's not a formal song that they would have in their drilling and marching. It is not formally affiliated with it. Well, from 1832 until 1877, there was a man down that way in Highland Falls. He ran a riverside tavern called Benny Havens, and it was about a mile from the cadet barracks. And over the years, over those 4.5 decades he was alive, and even a few years after that, there was many a cadet that would hear taps sound, head to his bunk briefly, and then go drinking at Benny Havens. And among the people who may well have taken that trip were a lot of Civil War luminaries, Ulysses S. Grant, Robert E. Lee, and even the president of the Confederacy was a West Point graduate. That would be Jefferson Davis. So this song was written by a Lieutenant O'Brien. The first set of lyrics were anyways. Over the years, other cadets have added lyrics to the songs. I think it's probably like the Battle of Saratoga. There's probably 21 verses now.
More the better.
But anyway, he wrote it, the words, and paired them with an Irish melody called The Wearing of the Green. Now, I guess it makes sense that a fellow named O'Brien would use an Irish melody. I guess that makes sense. But the establishment's long gone, but you'll still hear this song at West Point. Come and fill your glasses, fellows, and stand up in a row, for singing sentimentally we're going for to go. In the army there's sobriety, promotion's very slow, so we'll sing our reminiscences of Benny Havens, oh. Oh, Benny Havens, oh, Benny Havens, oh. We'll sing our reminiscences of Benny Havens, oh. Let us toast our foster father, the Republic, as you know, who in the paths of science taught us upward for to go, and the maidens of our native land whose cheeks like roses glow, they're oft remembered in our cups at Benny Havens, oh. Oh, Benny Havens, oh, Benny Havens, oh. We'll sing our reminiscences of Benny Havens, oh. Through our kind old alma mater, our rock-bound Highland home, we'll cast back many fond regrets as o'er life's sea we roam, until on our last battlefield the lights of heaven's glow. We'll never fail to drink to her and Benny Havens, oh. Oh, Benny Havens, oh, Benny Havens, oh. We'll sing our reminiscences of Benny Havens, oh. May the army be augmented, promotion be less slow. May our country in the hour of need be ready for the foe. May we find the soldiers a resting place beneath the soldiers' blow, with room enough beside our graves for Benny Havens, oh. Oh, Benny Havens, oh, Benny Havens, oh. We'll sing our reminiscences of Benny Havens, oh. Oh, Benny Havens, oh, Benny Havens, oh. We'll sing our reminiscences of Benny Havens, oh. Raise a glass, people,
Benny Havens.
to the long gray line, to the Corps Cadets.
Huzzah!
You're a little late on that huzzah, Michael, but all right, we'll take it. Well, I will tell you that. Now we're traveling from West Point. We're going all the way up to Saratoga County again, because not all of our military leaders came through West Point, and in the Civil War, there was a fellow by the name of Colonel Elmer Ellsworth. And Ellsworth is associated with a regiment called the 11th New York Volunteer Infantry. And Ellsworth drew his members of his regiment from the ranks of New York City firefighters. Now, we have here with us a fellow, Michael Eck, who comes from a firefighter family. But Ellsworth dressed his soldiers in these fanciful, outlandish uniforms that resembled those of some French Algerian fighters named the Zouaves. So they were called the Fire Zouaves or the Fire Zuzus. Ellsworth was born in Malta, and he moved to Mechanicville and grew up there, and then he later moved to New York City. And he took up an interest in the law, And that led him out west, where he interned in the office of an attorney who was very tall and very thin, and his name was Abe. So when Abe Lincoln got elected to the presidency, Ellsworth followed him to Washington. And unfortunately for Elmer Ellsworth, he would be the first New Yorker to die in the Civil War. He went on his mission across the river from Washington to Alexandria, Virginia, May 24, 1861. And he and his regiment saw a hotel with a Confederate flag flying on top. And he said, boys, I'm going to go get that flag. And he went up the stairs to the roof, and he got the flag, and he came down the stairs. And when he got to the bottom, the hotel owner shot him dead. And Elmer Ellsworth was avenged like 1 second later by this lieutenant named Brownell, who shot the hotel owner dead. But President Lincoln was very sad when he heard about it, and he had the body lie in state the next day in the East Room of the White House. Then they sent it down to New York City, where thousands viewed it, and then finally Elmer Ellsworth rests today on a hillside in Mechanicville, New York, in Hudson View Cemetery up there, and there's a monument up there erected in his honor back in 1873. But sounding like a sort of like a PBS special, I will tell you that if you want to learn more about the 11th New York Volunteer Infantry Regiment, visit the Firefighters Museum in Hudson, New York, where they have a display for you. But this is the song that is associated with the 11th New York Volunteers, the Fire Zuzus. It's called Abraham's Daughter. Oh, kind folks, listen to my song, it is no idle story. For it's all about a volunteer who's gone to fight for glory. Now, don't you think that I am right? I am nothing shorter. But I belong to the infantry. Don't you think I oughta? And we're going down to Washington to fight for Abraham's daughter. And should you ask me who she am, Columbia is her name, sir. She is the child of Abraham and Uncle Sam the same, sir. Now, if I fight white, I write, I am nothing shorter. Oh, the tears are pouring in from every loyal quarter. They're going down to Washington to fight for Abraham's daughter. Oh, but let us lay all jokes aside, it is a sorry question. And the man who would divide these states should hang for his suggestion. One country and one flag, I say, where the war may slaughter. So I'm going down as a fire Zuzu. Don't you think I oughta? We are going down to Washington to fight for Abraham's daughter. Thank you. Yeah. Go see Elmer Ellsworth.
Yeah.
When you get a chance, go up and see Elmer Ellsworth. Okay. Yeah, I'm looking at the time here. I think we do have time to get this one in. You're never sure on these shows, but I think I can. All right, it is somewhat ironic. I'm going to need a capo. Yeah. It's somewhat ironic that because of a novel written by a New Yorker, most folks associate American whaling with Massachusetts. But Herman Melville was born in New York City, moved to Albany when he was 11. He even lived in Rensselaer County for a while. But even the author of Moby Dick would have to admit that although Massachusetts was #1 in whaling, New York State was #2, force to be reckoned with. And there were ports down on Long Island, of course, saltwater ports, Sag Harbor, East Hampton, Montauk, and even some vessels made New York City their home. But here's the most amazing thing, seriously, the most amazing thing is that there were freshwater whaling ports here in New York. The city of Hudson, Newburgh, and Poughkeepsie all had whale ports miles and miles away from the ocean. So this selection is called the Montaukers, and it's very special because it contains two words that our banjo player, Mr. Paul Jossman, is going to define for you in just a moment. It's the only song that we play, and maybe the only song that anyone plays, that has the words torpor and stupor in it. So would you please define for these people what we've got here?
Yes,
Torpor.
the difference, torpor is defined as sluggishness, dullness, or apathy, whereas stupor is a state in which mind and senses are dulled, loss of sensibility.
Thank you. Thank you so much,
yes.
Paul. So now you're that much educated. There you go. Not for your playing, but for your defining. You were known.
yes.
You were defined by your defining.
Torpor and stupor, those are my bread and butter, right?
Anyway, the final thing I'll say about this song is it mentions James Fenimore Cooper, a New York State novelist. He's famous for the Leatherstocking Tales, of course, including Last of the Mohicans. But he also had an 1849 nautical novel called The Sea Lions. And so get ready for some torpor and stupor,
Okay,
people.
yep.
This chosen retreat was the home and the seat of the bold and adventurous whaler, and for years had supplied to the world far and wide the model American sailor. Oh, no maiden would look on a young man who took to a land life of torpor and stupor, when the scene was here laid of the sea lion's raid of our national novelist Cooper. In the prosperous years, there were shipyards and piers with coopers and riggers and caulkers, ship chandlers, sail makers, ship biscuit bakers, and whalemen then known as Montaukers. For no maiden would look on a young man who took to a land life of torpor and stupor, when the scene was here laid of the sea lion's raid of our national novelist Cooper. Here we go. Here's a health to them all. They follow the call to sail on the perilous waters. Oh, Montaukers are sailors, bold fearless whalers. Watch out for your wives and your daughters. For no maiden would look on a young man who took to a land life of torpor and stupor, when the scene was here laid of the sea lion's raid of our national novelist Cooper, of our national novelist Cooper. To the whalers.
To torpor and stupor!
Yeah.
And James Fenimore Cooper.
Everybody should, yeah.
They rhyme.
It rhymes. Torpor, stupor, Cooper.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a rhyme thing. It's a rhyme thing. Oh, my heavens. Well, I'm going to introduce the band to you. He made his first appearance on this stage in 1966 as a freshman at RPI, Mr. Paul Jossman. He made his first appearance on this stage February 8, 2022. Mr. Evan Conway. My longtime musical partner, Mr. Michael Eck.
Ladies and gentlemen, the man who chooses our songs, does all the research, sings the song. Please welcome Tom Lindsey.
Thank you. All right, we got a pair more for you. So glad to be playing in this magnificent hall. So glad to be here. I want to just tell you, we're not big on the social media, but we have a YouTube channel, and one of the videos you can catch on the YouTube channel is the one we're about to play. But we've got a website, LostRadioRounders.com, and a YouTube channel. Now, this song is a song from New York City. It's about a case of mistaken identity. Some of you may be familiar with a very wealthy man from the late 1800s called J.P. Morgan. His name is still out there on some companies. He, depending on whether you liked him or not, he was either a captain of industry or a robber baron, but he started companies such as U.S. Steel and International Harvester and General Electric, so Schenectady must be very grateful to J.P. Morgan. But, you know, the song is not really about him. It's about a poor fellow who shares J.P.'s last name but does not share his bank account. A man named William Morgan took his gal to see a play. On the journey homeward, they stopped into a cafe. And as soon as they were seated, Liza grabbed the bill of fare. She called the waiter over, ordered, everything was there. Bill says, I know you're hungry, girl, and I don't like to squeal. Who do you suppose is gonna pay for such a meal? You may have known me pretty long, you sure have got my initials wrong. My name is Morgan, but it ain't J.P. My name is Morgan, but it ain't J.P. You must think I own a railroad company. Now you may have known me pretty long, sure I've got my initials wrong. My name is Morgan, but it ain't J.P. Bill Morgan married Liza, thinking she would change her ways. What she did to William, I am most ashamed to say. Whenever she'd go shopping, she'd buy everything she'd see. What she couldn't pay for, had it sent home COD. One day, 6 big delivery wagons backed up to Bill's door. They asked him to accept the goods, and they went back for more. It didn't take Bill very long to grab his hat and coat. When Liza, she returned again, she found this little note. My name is Morgan, but it ain't J.P. There is no bank on Wall Street that belongs to me. Now you may have known me pretty long, sure I've got my initials wrong. My name is Morgan, but it ain't J.P. My name is Morgan, but it ain't J.P. There is no Texas oil well that belongs to me. You may have known me pretty long, but sure I've got my initials wrong. My name is Morgan, but it ain't J.P. Now you may have known me pretty long, sure I've got my initials wrong. My name is Morgan, but it ain't J.P. Thank you. Thank you much. Thank you much. Real treat to be here on this stage again, and we want to thank everybody at the Music Hall.
We'd really like to thank John and Stacy and Karen and all the great staff they have here at the hall. This is one of the treasures we have in the area. Please keep coming back.
Now, if you want proof that Troy was fabulously wealthy, or at least had some fabulously wealthy people in it in the 1800s, there you go. There you go. So here we are. This is going to be our final song. But here we are in the Collar City. And it could just as easily have been the Stove City, because that was a big thing for a long time. It could have been the fabulous Burden Water Wheel City, because that was one of the wonders of the Industrial Revolution, the gigantic Burden Water Wheel. Could have been the Horseshoe City, because as strange as it seems to say, there were innovations in horseshoe making made right here in Troy, New York.
Of course.
And supplied most of the horseshoes for the Union Army in the Civil War. So don't you forget that. Or maybe even the Education City. Could have been that. Emma Willard and what she did, and Sage College, and that alma mater of yours. What's the one in PIE?
Something
what is
like
it?
that, yeah.
RPI. All right. But anyway, this song, according to New York State folklorist Harold Thompson, who's been going a long time, this song was popular among the Irish American gals who worked in the collar factories. And again, it's not going to surprise us that this song borrows an Irish melody. In this case, a song called The Bard of Arma, which is most famously used for a cowboy song. Anybody? Maybe Steve knows, I don't know. Mm-hmm. The Streets of Laredo also uses this melody. So we are going to say goodbye to you with this cautionary tale from the gals in the collar factories. It's called Wrapped in Red Flannel. As I went out walking one bright sunny morning, as I went out walking one morning in May, for to visit my darling sick in the infirmary, she was wrapped in red flannels on that warm summer day. Under her pillow a note she had written. Oh, under her pillow that note it did say, don't you ever go courting or sporting or gambling, for it leads to destruction, it leads you astray. And now as I'm dying, please send for my mother. Oh, send for my mother, don't let her delay. Mother, dear mother, your daughter is dying, and there's a young man who has led her astray. When I am gone, lay me out in white satin, cover my coffin with the flowers of May. 6 jolly sportsmen shall carry that coffin, and they'll sing the Dead March as they lay me away. No more shall attend her. Now she is dead, they have laid her away. Beneath the soil she will soon be forgotten by the handsome young rake who had led her astray. Thank you so much. God bless. Have a great afternoon, Mr. Paul Jossman, Mr. Michael Eck, Evan Conway. I'm Tom Lindsey. We'll see you down the road.
Thank you.